Hello and welcome to this week's episode of TLDR CLG. This is the week of February 23rd, 2015, and these are my co-hosts, Cry and Jim. My name is Brendan, and I'll be your host for this week. So we're going to be talking about how CLG fared in LoL this week. CLG fared in LoL, Halo, and CSGO. So we're first going to be diving into LoL. They play against Dignitas, Cloud9, our challenger team, CLG Black, played against TSM Darkness. Cry, tell me what happened in Dignitas. Why are we so hyped up about this game? Did anything happen? Did CLG roll over and die? Did Dignitas roll over and die? Come on.
The second one. So in CLG versus Dignitas, CLG went for an invade in the enemy's topside jungle. But because Dignitas was able to put down an early ward in their own jungle, they were able to see CLG actually coming in. So the entirety of Dignitas was hiding behind in the little cave that's like wolves. The wolf camp. And because they had vision of CLG, they knew that CLG was coming and everything. But CLG, with their Braum, the level 1 Braum passive, God bless, was able to turn things around into their own, like, they were able to put everything in their own rhythm. So CLG was able to pick up the first blood and the second blood. And it was pretty amazing to watch. Because of that, they had an early lead. And because of that early lead, their shot calling this game was amazing, by the way. They had a 3-man proxy up in top lane to really set Gamsu behind. And that just really like started the ball rolling to get their snowball and just really beaten Dignitas down. They did really well that game, I feel.
All right. So I think that's about it for the Dignitas game. It was a kind of a stomp. So I'm going to move on to Cloud9. Jim, can you just cover that? I hear it was a lot closer of a game. CLG had a couple of major misplays, but it was an interesting game nonetheless. So can you just run down that game and tell us what happened?
Sure. Yeah, I think it was a very well played game on both sides. It was just a lot of early objective and kill trading. Initially, CLG was ahead on objective trades because they won the kill trades out of those. They ended up, I think, it was 2 or 3-0 ahead pretty early. But once it came to the mid to late game, Cloud9 bounced back and won team fights. We saw Balls go ham on his Rumble, landing amazing ults in team fights and just tearing CLG apart because he figured out which corridors they were going to be in or where to land a Rumble ult. Land this equalizer. Like there's this one equalizer that was just immaculate on Doublelift because he landed the equalizer and Rek'Sai goes and burrows underneath of Sivir, pops him up while he's still in the equalizer. Then Braum jumps onto Rek'Sai and ults on top of Doublelift. And then you see Rumble flash forward to keep the Flame Spitter on. And they just, even though CLG made really strong initiates, we saw amazing Jarvan and Maokai initiates and getting 4 people set up for a team, just like crazy AoE damage. C9 counter-initiated and was able to take out Doublelift, who was the bed carry.
Okay.
So overall, it was a good game.
Videos' Rek'Sai and Balls' Rumble were so great to watch.
They played on point.
No.
Like
as a CLG fan, as a CLG fan, that's the most depressing thing ever.
As a CLG fan, maybe not.
It was like, this is great play. I love watching this happen. I love it, but I hate watching this happen.
Why wasn't that Zion?
It was a love-hate relationship. It was a great game.
Yeah.
I want to see another matchup, but there isn't another one until playoffs possible.
Oh,
so.
God.
Yeah.
Don't you love that best-of-1 format? It sure builds up that tension.
Oh, it's great. Oh, it's great.
Playoffs. And then if we don't ever meet them in the playoffs, we'll never know who's the better team.
You know, an interesting one. Further after this C9 CLG game, we saw Travis interview a few of the C9 players, but specifically he interviewed High, and High came out of it saying, "We think CLG is the best team in North America right now, particularly because the way CLG is dictating games against every team they play against, especially these top tier teams. Like I think C9's a top tier team. I think TSM's a top tier team." But in both games, you can see those teams on their back. You can see them sitting back and like CLG is saying, "This is what's happening right now. Make your reaction. This is what's happening right now." And yeah, CLG may mess up and lose the team fights, but if they start winning the team fights or make the comps and make that like synergy in team fights work, when you're dictating the game, it's kind of hard to lose if you don't lose team fights.
You could really like see that, especially in the Dignitas game, though, because their shot calling was so decisive. They have a much better grip on shot calling and just like rotations and just like macro level strategies. And you can really tell that CLG is coming a long way. So
when you see them against these lower tier teams, they don't have to win the team fights because they don't need to have team fights. They just walk all over the team. They say, no, this objective, now this objective. We're picking this person while we're getting this objective.
They have so much of a stronger map presence than like before.
Yeah. It was great.
All right. So I'm gonna take that Cloud9 interview with a grain of salt. So I think CLG may be harder to play against than TSM, but I think Cloud9 is being PR as usual. You know, aside from that, CLG Black played against TSM Darkness. TSM Darkness, for everyone who doesn't know, is a Zingy's team. What happened?
It was a pretty good game. Or both games were pretty good, solid. I think it like swapped back either way. If you didn't know already, TSM Darkness was formerly Team Confound, or at least if you wanted to go look at their previous games, they were Team Confound during the playoffs to get into Challenger Series. They lost to C9, who had gotten banned permanent or banned for the next split, I think, at least. So TSM Darkness in the first game won the game pretty heavily. They had their solo laners went off really hard pretty early. They had a 0-death Xerath and just a crazy fed Aurelia. Then the second game, CLG didn't win as hard as TSM did in their first match, or as Darkness did. But we saw a really strong Rumble play out of Westrice, and I really liked watching Thinkard that game. He was just all over the map, keeping control for the team. But overall, it went 1-1, so it's hard to say which team's better.
Not bad.
All right, as we said last week, the reason why they're playing instead of C9 Tempest is because C9 Tempest got disqualified for using a ringer, and that's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting because like C9, CLG, and TSM are usually the big powerhouses, and seeing them play against each other, it's interesting turn of events. So for everyone who thinks I don't know jack squad about the Challengers squad, I know who Westrice is. I know. Okay, enough said. So we move on to CSGO. From what I understand, this is like a bit of a dry week for CSGO for CLG at least. And so can you just give me like a quick rundown what happened, point out the major games, just like go through what happened and whatever, whatnot.
Yeah, it was a bunch of league matches. And then there was a playoff match. We saw the first match was, or the first match that I paid attention to was in CVOP. They had 3 matches. They had one against Mythic, which they lost on Nuke. After having an okay T side on Nuke, which is extremely CT sided, they had this 4-11 T side. They started their initial comeback on the CT side, but then Mythic won the buy round on T side, which is where CTs should take over the game, and it just was lost at that point. I know their next match in CVOP was the Ascendancy game, and I know, Cry, you paid more attention to that one than I did.
Okay. Versus the Ascendancy game, they were on Overpass, and it was 16-3. What's really interesting about this one is that they lost the first half. They were on CT side, and the score was 5-11. But the second that they got onto T side was when they started like making their own comeback. Lucky for this game, it was really interesting because Lucky was a stand-in for Tarek. It was his birthday. And Hazed had a pretty sick play on the second half when they were on T side on their pistol round. It ended up being a 2 versus 1, and Hazed was the last man standing. And while both of the enemy team on Ascendancy were waiting for him at bomb site B, he was able to rotate all the way over to bomb site A, hide in a corner, and wait and take the last 2 out by himself. So that was a pretty clutch play. He said that he's not used to clutch plays, but whatever, man. That was a pretty sick thing to watch. Also, after that, they were supposed to be playing versus Team Liquid, but Liquid ended up forfeiting. So that's unfortunate.
So all 3 of those matches weren't particularly hugely important for the standings of CVOP. CLG had already set in stone that they were going to be in CVOP playoffs, and they played their first playoff match this weekend also, which was against Ascendancy again. This one was a best of 3, and they played and won a reasonably swift 2-0. They won their first map pretty handily, 16-6, but their second map they played on Inferno, and that was a bit of a tricky game. They ended up having to come back pretty hard on, I think it was T-side. In the end, it was a pretty solid 2-0. So the rest of CS:GO this week was just as Brendan was mentioning, it's pretty dry. Just league matches. They had 2 losses in Face It, which they were playing against Team Liquid and SKDC. They lost 16-12, 16-14. Team Liquid is a team like reasonably okay to lose to. They're one of the top teams in North America. SKDC, they're good. They're not like bottom tier team, but they're not like, they shouldn't, quote unquote, shouldn't be on CLG's level, but they happen to be able to beat them several times recently. So I guess maybe it's some sort of kryptonite or something going on there. And then their last match that they had was an ESEA game yesterday against C9, which they lost on Nuke. It's this recurring problem CLG's had is they have an issue on CT sides. CT side, the way they've been pointing out on Twitter at least, has been their CT side has been lacking, their pistol rounds have been lacking, except for that, I guess, that Ascendancy game. Well, that was a clutch, so that
was a very clutch play.
Yeah, so that's a bad pistol round anyway. And then they have been having issues in online matches, which all of these are online, so what can you expect? I hope that it's just some sort of trouble that they'll have ironed out before Katowice, but we're going to see that when it comes.
I think one of the important things to note about that C9 game, like the ESEA C9, is the fact that it was on Nuke. And Nuke is known for being like heavily CT side. And they were still having trouble with it. Which, because, they said that they're having trouble with CT side, and they really need to improve on that if they want to go to Katowice, or want to really perform at Katowice.
Alrighty. So that should be it for our CSGO session. Do you guys have anything else to add, or is that going to be it?
No, that's about it, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be moving on to Halo. So it was kind of, it was actually the biggest tournament we've had in a while, like, aside from, like, UGC, St. Louis, and, whatchamacallit. So UGC, St. Louis, and Iron Gaming Columbus. So it's actually a pretty major LAN. It was at Michigan, right? And I think that CLG did pretty well. It was like, it wasn't 100% like CLG crushed everyone, but it was actually pretty interesting because CLG did really well. They beat Noble Black for the first time in a while, and they pretty much ran through like the top 8 teams, like pretty much like one after another. So Jim, can you just like take that away, give us an overview of the entire tournament and how like it went?
Yeah, I'd say the tournament went pretty well. It solidified that CLG is probably second best team in the HCS. In the first, they had to buy the first round because of that top seed that they had, and they played against Los Pollos Ambientos and Strafe, which they pretty handily 3-0'd in both their games. And then they played a game against Noble Black, which has been a bit of a kryptonite recently, even though they have been scrimming a lot. But CLG went and stood up and said, like, they showed through play that their LAN play is solid, or at least LAN play, the games were played online. And they had this really strong Warlord game where they were controlling camo really well. Snakebite got a Sentinel Beam and camo and was able to just rip through Noble. And then they had another. I guess their big thing was in King of the Hill on Warlord, where they were just controlling side hills really well. So they control the side hill and control this camo, and they would be able to, whenever the hills would rotate, they would be able to catch the extra seconds that Noble would have to like really fight for. And so this led them into a later game where they played this quarterfinal game against Optic. Which is another best of 5, and they ended up getting 3-0'd by Optic, which was kind of depressing to watch, especially because CLG was up in 2 of those matches. They were actually extremely very far ahead in 2 of those matches, and Optic was able to make these crazy comeback victories and then take one solid victory off of them. The reason Optic has been really stepping up compared to where they are in the standings is because they have this new player, Contra, who is he's a very strong FFA player. He showed up in an FFA LAN and just went crazy all over the competition and got picked up by Optic pretty much right away. So CLG went to the losers bracket and had some reasonably close games. They played against Denial. Was it Denial?
No,
or
I don't
Elevate?
think they played against Elevate. They played against Elevate, then they played against.
They played
C9,
against Elevate
Optic,
and
PG.
C9. Yeah, they played against Elevate first and won that reasonably swiftly, and then played against C9. I think it ended up being a 3-1 or 3-2 game.
3-2.
3-2. Yeah, I think they were down 2-1 at one point in that, and they ended up making the pretty solid comeback. That was a pretty good match to watch. The more important one, in my opinion, was they made it to losers finals and then played Optic again, which that would have been a pretty hype match, especially because they lost 3-0 to Optic, and Optic would have had the I guess they would have been excited about playing that match again, especially because they'd already beaten the team. They may have them demoralized. Well, CLG went in 3-0 that one reasonably swiftly. It was definitely a good match. We saw CLG behind in CTF and then make a comeback, and then I think my favorite part of that game would have had to been that matchup. Would have had to been CLG in the Team Slayer, which they had in Team Slayer. It was on Hightower, and they had a pretty early lead, or Optic had a pretty early lead, and then CLG came back, took the lead, ended up winning in regulation, but then there was an issue and had the game reset back to a point where CLG needed 18 points to win versus Optic needing 20 points to win, and the game came down to there being, I think it was like 1 or 2 minutes left in it, and CLG was down a few points, down a few frags. They made like 2 or 3 good picks, got up 4 frags, got up 7 frags, and then let Optic take control of Hightower, the center point of the map, and Optic wasn't able to get the picks they needed in the last few seconds of the match, and CLG took it away.
All right. So moving on from like those things, me and Kai actually watched the games together for the finals, and it was like she's a casual Halo fan, so she can just give her primary experiences or her first experiences as exposure to Halo and whatnot.
Okay. So, if you guys watching this are like me, and you guys really started off like following CLG from the LOL like group, and you guys don't know much about Halo, then I'll just tell you this. I'm a very casual like Halo viewer. I've looked at a couple games. I didn't really know what was going on, but this finals versus EG was like the first time that I really sat down and like tried to understand Halo. And God, okay, this is just a personal opinion, but as a spectator sport, it is so entertaining. There's like guns and explosions everywhere, and guys flying, and when someone dies, like their bodies just fly everywhere, and it's really funny to see. But I was able to see that our CLG Halo team really is such an impressive team to watch. They were fighting versus EG, right? And the 3 game modes that they had to play were Capture the Flag, Team Slayer, and what was the last one? King of the Hill. So all 3 ones, they put up a really good fight, but they ended up just falling behind just a slight bit. Like, if one person had just done one thing, it could have turned out a completely different game, but it was all very close. CLG was very close to all of them. I think one of my favorite moments, which I think we're going to show you later, was in the Capture the Flag game, where there was, EG was up 3-2. And what happened was they needed 3-3 to go to overtime. And Hines was able to get the flag literally at the last second. There was 1 second left on the clock. And he was able to get the flag back to their base to make it 3-3 to go into overtime. And it's just like, it's so entertaining to see the Halo team. And I really like them. And they're, it seems so complicated because, especially me, I've never played Halo before. I've just been watching the streams and such. But it's so cool, and I feel like we should give our Halo team some more love because they really did really well, like, for this entire best of 5. So even though EG was able to take it 3-0, they really did put up a good fight.
Yeah, so as Cry was saying, that the Capture the Flag was really close. It was actually forced into overtime with a last-minute cap. The next game was Team Slayer. We had a relatively close early game and a relatively close mid game until it was like 44-40 at one point in the game where EG was up 4 kills. And then it was just like they pulled ahead a little bit and they just like finished snowballing that, and then it was 50-43. So it was kind of interesting how that one ended out, because CLG was always within shooting distance or within arm's reach of like a victory. But they never really had that last inch. And I think EG really played really well this tournament. And I think that, like as Jim said, they came into this tournament probably not the best team, but they came out, they're definitely the best team. They deserve the #1 seed.
Even with the King of the Hill, though, there was a part where CLG was actually ahead, but like EG really was just able to overtake them and outplay them. So.
All right, so we're going to be moving on to the games and plays of the week section. I think we've already covered most of the Halo stuff, so this is going to be a little bit of a transition. So aside from that, I think that the major plays we have for the 3 teams that we have so far, I think it would be the level 1 against Dig, the proxy, and the Heinz flag capture that we had a little bit earlier that we talked about. So can you guys just break down the Dig stuff and break down the Dignitas game and like what happened like in the early game? It was so interesting because I know like Kai had some questions, Jim had a lot of answers. So can you guys just
Okay, so we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but I never really got a clear-cut answer. So that level 1 with Dig versus CLG, what was the problem? Like, what was more, like you guys said that Morgana shouldn't have gotten by and they should have gotten pool. Can you guys explain that to me? Because why should she have gotten pool?
I think there could have been different, like, I don't think Dignitas was sure how they wanted to run that team fight. They could, like, there were multiple ways they could have done it, but they all seemed to pick the wrong abilities to do it. So if Morgana had gotten pool there and Rumble had gotten Flame Spitter there, you would have had this Flash, Unburrow, 5-man knockup, and then a pool and a Flame Spitter on top of it to do crazy AoE damage. But instead, Morgana got binding, landed the binding, and Rumble got harpoons, and those are single target. So they had 2 single target damage spells, which landed on a couple targets, and then an AoE knockup, and that overall didn't do the damage they wanted. If they went for the binding play, I think going for the damage spell, the Q on Rek'Sai may have been a good idea, because the AoE damage would have forced the team to consider backing away, and then the single target damage would burst that player down. And overall, in my opinion, Flame Spitter was probably just the better choice, especially if they're going for this 5-man engage. Mm-hmm. I just think they messed up on picking abilities there. It just didn't work out as well as they had wanted.
Fortunately for us.
Fortunately for CLG.
Which is like, it's like, that's like the big factor of that is considering the fact that they had the vision. Like, they knew CLG was coming. They should have been able to figure out what they wanted to do. Given it, like, granted it was a small amount of time, but still. Like, they should have been able, I feel, to coordinate that better then.
Yeah, I think additionally, Double played that really well with his jumps. He jumped in, got a couple of slows, and he flashed back out. I think he could have gotten maybe an auto on Cloud Nguyen during his first jump when he flashed back out, because Cloud Nguyen was at 3 stacks on the Braum Q, or on the Braum passive, and then if he just one more auto attack, it would have been a stun. It could have been a free kill, or it could have been close to a kill. But then I think that aside from like a couple of small issues that I had felt, it was just a safety issue. I think that CLG played that first team fight like really, really well, and then they transitioned that into also a super interesting like level like a 3-man proxy. Could Cry talk a little bit about that and just like bring us into the 3-man proxy and tell us like what it achieved, how it really set Zion ahead, and like why is it so interesting?
So because of they had the advantage with first and second blood with that level 1 invade, they like Double Lift, Afro, and I believe it was Xmithy. Yeah, it was Xmithy, right? They were able to actually just have a 3-man proxy up top lane. So Gamsu had nothing. And, like, Zion was 1v1ing versus the AD carry down bot lane, and he was all good. And Zion was able to hold his own. Zion was able to get XP and farm, but Gamsu had nothing. Gamsu was so held down, and CLG just had, like, chains around Dignitas's neck. Like, they were in complete control, and that was just like, wow, shot calling is amazing. Good job, guys. Like, you could see how decisive they were. You could see how, like, confident they were in trusting in their calls. Because that's the kind of thing, if just one person had just done something else different, like, he didn't, like, Xmithy didn't come top, or he left top, like, it would have turned out completely differently for CLG. But they were able to trust and follow through, which is really good for them.
All right, bringing it over to the final play of the week. How do you think? Well, I think we had a little bit of explanation, so I want to go a little bit more in depth after we play the clip. So we're going to have our producer play the clip.
Now might be able to do this as well. Gets the double kill, but no return just yet. And Heinz looking to make something happen here too. He's just looking at these caps all over, or these attempts all over the place, and that will do it. Snipe down will lock that one in, and Evil Geniuses will make this 3-2. How many minutes do we have left to play here? We have seconds. We have 42 seconds left on the clock.
And that was largely due to a triple kill from Roy in the grenades to take out that CLG pushback right there as they were kind of back-checking their way to the flag. Roy with a huge play to give his team the lead with 30 seconds left before OT.
That was very well done. Very well done out of Roy. You know, again, he's that player that comes out clutch so much. Although we're starting to see that it seems like CLG is mounting a comeback now. Heinz has the flag, taking it over to green.
Gosh, could
this be it? Yeah, of course, Snakebite needs to stay up here.
Yes, he does.
He manages to get that kill, but Richie Heinz thinking, what is he going to do? They're going to watch their med pack. There is going to be someone
Here's the toss. Let's see if Snakebite is there.
No, he's running it. He's running it.
Oh, yes,
and he's going to get the capture. That's going to make it 3-3 at 15 minutes on the clock.
Okay.
All right, so that game was actually really that game wasn't like the most important in the overall grand scheme of things, but it was a really cool play. Craig talked about how it was like 45 seconds, Snipe down, gets a cap, 3-2. I'm just like, ugh, this game is over. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah, Azure had no trust, guys. He had no trust.
I just all dreary, and it's like 45 seconds, unless like.
I believe.
I'm just like CLG fan, classic. Like, we've lost this game, we're gonna get relegated mentality, and then Cry's just like, you can do this. We got this.
You know, actually, while we were watching that, I was still like yelling at the screen. I was like, no, go, 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 go. And Azure was like, nah, nothing's gonna happen. Wait, what? My hope will never die.
Hey, no worries. We got crushed right after that in overtime.
That's okay. That's okay though, because it was a play worth making.
Okay.
I was really hoping we'd win overtime because I mean, it's Ogre time. I would assume that Ogre just goes crazy there.
God. Oh, bad puns are my thing. God, that hurt.
Right
that really hurt.
Right in your gallbladder. That's where that one was aimed at.
Oh. Okay, so in light of that Ogre time, you guys can go follow Heinz on his Twitter, on his Twitch, and you can probably find Ogre 2 on his Twitter and his Twitch. We're going to be moving on to the player of the week because there's too much just doesn't there's too many layers to this joke. All right, so moving on. So the player of the week is, for me at least, was Royal 2 because he performed really well, really consistently. So he was like kind of like the focal point of the team. He did really well. I don't really have the words to describe like how well he did. So can Jim just like give us like the breakdown of how well he did, why he's so integral to their success?
I mean, if I could give player of the week to the whole Halo team, I would. But outside of that, Royal just seemed to step it up in general. He had very low death counts, had very high frag counts, and was an extremely important objective player in every match. When like myself, I wasn't a huge Halo fan until starting to pay attention to HCS these tournaments recently. Mm-hmm. And when the casters, who are former pros themselves, go and just get really hyped about Royal 2's scoreline at the end of games, that's enough for me to just think they made it to finals out of the loser bracket. The guy's just a hot player right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's not much else I can think of to say besides like we've already given like Heinz and Ogre and Royal.
I guess follow his Twitter, follow his stream. They stream all the time. It's worthwhile. They tend to tweet when they're going to stream, so following them both is useful.
Yeah, our Halo guys are super fun to watch, so you guys should totally, give them some love.
And then there's also like the often forgotten Snake, but he did a vlog really recently. We really enjoyed it. His mic kind of sucked, but We still love him. So you still follow him on Twitter and Twitch. So we're gonna be moving on past the player of the week and moving on to like looking into the future next week. LOL, we're kind of playing as two pretty teams. Winter Fox and Team Liquid. I don't really have a word for them. They're not like Dignitas bad, but they're not really like, they're not really like the Gravity. It's kind of sad when I'm saying Gravity is a good team. And they're not even a good team. They're like a decent team. So I'm guessing they're like the same vein as Gravity. They're like not great, not good. They're kind of okay, I guess, right? And how do you feel about these games? There's like 4 Koreans on one team, tech, and then there's like 2 Koreans plus a bench Korean. Don't forget the bench Korean.
Stop.
I think they're both actually pretty good teams. That's just my personal opinion.
What?
Yeah. Well, we saw Winter Fox play Liquid this past week, and Winter Fox
is looking good.
Yeah, no, they're looking pretty solid. Winter Fox came out with a win against Liquid, and overall they have generally, as people would call it, hyphy players like Pobelter. Is it Pobelter or Throwbelter showing up? I'd like to think that given Pobelter's been playing so much solo queue and standing up quite a bit, he's going to be Pobelter most of the time, but you never know. They're all 4 speaking in Korean. I think they're a reasonably strong team. I think the whole middle of the pack that maybe just in scoreline wise contains Cloud9 is like within arm's reach, if not shorter than arm's reach away from the top teams. Because we saw, Team Liquid lost to Winter Fox, but they beat TSM. And they destroyed TSM. At the end of the game, when the game was effectively already over, Wild Turtle scored a pentakill and almost a second pentakill in the middle of their base with all their inhibs down. But Liquid took over that game, and no one, it's not worth forgetting that some less than a month ago, people were saying Team Liquid's probably the strongest team this split. They're going to be amazing. I think they're still a good team. I think these are both going to be important matches to show that CLG is like a step ahead of the curve on these teams.
All right, but with all the hype going into Piglet versus Doublelift, we know who the better one is. The one who isn't.
That's a kind of
bench.
sad one. The one who isn't benched, yeah.
I only lose lane to LCS starter.
Yes, that's great. But aside from that, I think Piglet still has a ways to go. I think challenger scene might be a good place for him to be.
Stop.
I think he's probably a gold player. Could probably do a little bit better there.
I think he could get put back on the team. Honestly, they're gonna keep running with Keith as long as Keith is performing and the team feels good about it. But
so you're saying that Keith is gonna get benched next week after Doublelift and after Moose send him to the hospital?
It's possible. I mean, Keith sent them to the hospital week 1.
Oh, got him.
He sent Benny to the hospital. He sent
that's true. That's true.
It's going to be a great rematch, I think, because I mean they were technically they were both subs back in.
Because I mean, if they didn't play against this lineup, they wouldn't have ever gotten to rematch this.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have been playing against Piglet and would have been just an entire different style though.
Rest in peace, Doublelift versus Piglet in the NALCS. Our dreams.
Playoffs. It'll happen. Keep Keith will only last so long. You never know.
Letukem will be departing on a stretcher. So, let's go on to the other game. Winter Fox, we're talking about how they're super good. My only response to that is, have you seen Avalon play Maokai? I've never seen a better cosplay of a tree in my life. No?
Stop.
No, okay, let's just move on to the Challenger Series games. So we're going to be talking about, just like West Rice and the Best Rice. Stix A, Easy. These are really, really, really easy names to remember. But,
yeah.
Penny, think hard.
I think we saw, this Final 5 roster is one of the better. It's a roster full of teams that players that we remember from, if you paid attention to the Challenger Series, the end of the Challenger Series come promotion or the expansion tournament. People remember a strong performing Gate. They remember Rule 18 performing well. They remember Prototype playing well. But Rux has been around in the scene for quite a while. He goes in and out of whether he's considered to be this strong player. I think he was subbing for Winter Fox, so obviously someone thinks he's LCS playable. And then they have this. They have a sub for their jungle in El Bacro, which I'm not sure if he's what sort of level of player he is. Do you guys know too much about this player?
I hear he might be a sub for Elements after they decide to replace Shook.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about it. They the one short Asian on their team, Shorter Ace, is already moved on to another team, Brawl, Alex H's team. But I don't think there's much to be interested. There's nothing much to be like. There's nothing much we can really speculate because the two teams are pretty different. Like I don't know how they match up, and it's kind of man. There's nothing really. It's not gonna be broadcast live. There's nothing really we can cheer for. It's already matched. We can cheer for CLG anyway. But like man, Final Five.
I think it'll be worthwhile to
they
watch.
Have that AD carry who doesn't know that heal is a summoner spell, and they have a support. I think they have a support player. I'm not sure.
I mean, again, these games aren't broadcasted live. You can catch them. You can catch the VODs pretty easily. They do run a stream where they're casted, so it's worth watching. But
well, Oceana's also casted. That's not worth watching.
Okay, stop. Rich Gang.
I don't know. I'm a Rich Gang fan.
Hey man, have you seen those promo videos? Come on.
All right, let's move on to CS:GO, where I don't know enough players to trash talk them. So Faceit and ESEA also have two major two like events going on. So can you just explain what's going on and like what matches should we be watching for?
Okay, Faceit and ESEA, right? In Faceit, CLG is going to be going up against Cloud9 and Elevate. And I particularly am excited for the ESEA CLG versus Mythic game because earlier in this week, as we talked about earlier, CLG got pretty much like face stomped, like just face rolled by Mythic. So I really want to see their CT side improve, and I just want to see them just like get back in Mythic, you know, just like put up a fight this time.
All right, so
nice I guess one thing that we didn't mention is that there are going to be the CVOP playoff matches further this week, though it hasn't been announced.
Yeah.
I think because the other playoff matches haven't finished and set up the bracket, though that's not available at the time. We may just link in the comments when those matches are happening once it gets announced.
Okay, so aside from that, we're just like there's a little fun fact that I was going to toss in a little bit earlier, but I forgot. But there's we've actually played C9 in 3 different games. We would have played against them in all 4 of our teams would have played against them because you know, like C9 Tempest would have played against CLG Black. We played against them in Halo. We played against them in the main LCS, and we also played against them in CS:GO. So we won one of those. We kind of didn't win due to one of the other 2, but it's kind of interesting that we technically would have played against C9 4 different times if the whole Tempest thing worked out right. So moving on to the Halo section for the next week, looking into the future. There's not actually much going on next week, so we're going to be talking a little bit further in projection. It's going to be actually March 7th through 8th, which is going to be at PAX East, which is the Penny Arcade Expo, which is kind of be probably a super huge thing. So if you can go out there, support our team, bring some signs, maybe some, I don't know, CLG love, hashtag CLG fighting, you know. Just like go out there, support the team. They're probably going to
make a big CLG sign.
Make a big CLG sign. You can have 3 CLG signs with a C, L, and a G. But then
no, dye your hair pink.
That's not a good thing.
Dye your hair pink in support.
I don't think we should be encouraging people to do that.
Mourning. We shouldn't be encouraging people to ruin their hair follicles.
Hey, Hacho looks good. Okay, chill.
Looks good, okay. But aside from that, it's going to be PAX East. They're going to be like the next couple of days or next week or so is going to be ramping up for that tournament. And it's going to be a really exciting match. Like if you can't go there live, try to tune in and watch it with us. So that should be it for this week's episode. So this is the week of February 23rd. We've pretty much covered all things that happened. We weren't really in depth on Halo, so if you guys don't really want to watch that, too late. You've already gotten to the end. But hopefully you guys enjoyed our entire episode. Once again, I have my co-hosts Cry and Jim with me. My name is Brendan, and we'll see you again next week.